The train didn't roar like something alive. Instead, it rattled in dry, empty clanks, just a tired old engine dragging fragile hopes through the dust. Nobody clapped. No hands lifted in greeting. It rolled in slow, as if even the locomotive sensed it wasn't welcome here. She stepped down with one trunk wrapped tight in her mother's hand-stitched shawl, sunlight carving harsh shadows across her face. Her name had been written with neat strokes on the envelope. To Mr. Reuben Tully, Smoke Valley, Arizona Territory. That letter had offered her marriage, a roof, and work that didn't cost her dignity. It had promised a new start, one where she wouldn't have to carry the weight of being someone's daughter. But names don't scrub off. And in a place like Smoke Valley, they hang in the air before you've even opened your mouth. The platform was nothing more than a warped plank of wood lined with hostile stares. She spotted the man from the photograph. He was older now, thicker around the middle, sweat soaking the front of his collar. He looked her over like meat gone bad. His eyes slid from the envelope in her hand to the shawl and finally up to her face. "You didn't say your daddy was Ezekiel Braddock," he said, voice flat as dust. She didn't react, didn't blink, didn't think it would matter. "It does," he muttered, stepping away. "Ezekiel's girl? Not under my roof." From the shaded edges of the station, voices rose, some snorting with laughter, others just staring with smug, greasy grins. The station master leaned against the doorway like he'd seen this scene more than once. A couple of teenage boys let out hoots, one calling, "Drunk's daughter, guess it runs in the veins." She didn't cry. She'd learned not to. Not since the night her father hurled a bottle at her face just for blinking too loud. Her fingers stayed steady as she folded the letter and tucked it back into her boot. Reuben Tully spat on the ground, turned his back, and walked off like she'd never been there at all. And just like that, she wasn't anyone's bride anymore. She stood still until the onlookers grew bored and wandered away one by one. An older woman gave her a glance, part sympathy, part something colder. Not quite pity, more like a warning. "You shouldn't have come here." She gripped her trunk with both hands and started walking. Nowhere, really. The dirt road offered no kindness, and the heat pressed into her chest until it stole her breath. Above her, a buzzard circled. She heard the wing beats before she saw the shadow. Then, footsteps. Measured. Quiet. She turned. He was a few paces behind her. Tall, broad in the shoulders. Clean, but not freshly so. Dust clung to his coat like it had taken up residence there. His hat shaded most of his face. But his eyes, they held steady. Not gentle. Just steady. And that matters. "Name's not the thing right now," he said. Like they were picking up a conversation they hadn't started. "But I've got space. And I don't deal in town gossip." She narrowed her eyes. "You saw what just happened." "I did. And you're still talking to me?" "Sure am." "Why?" He shifted his weight, not nervous, just thinking. "Looked like you needed a place. I've got one. What do you expect in return?" "Ma'am, I'm tired. Got 2 horses that don't complain. And a cabin full of silence I didn't ask for. I'm not looking to settle debts." She didn't believe him. Not fully. She wanted to. But trust was something her father had long ago traded in. For a bottle of rye and a woman that wasn't her mother. Still, her feet were done walking. And this man? He wasn't leaking lies. His voice didn't wear polish. It was plain-spoken. And there was something about the way he stood, like a door left open. Not a trap. Just a choice. She gave a single nod. He picked up her trunk without a word and started walking. They passed a church with a lopsided sign that promised Sunday hope and Wednesday stew. Then the saloon, where a one-eyed man rocked in a chair, humming like a ghost still stuck between wars. No one waved. The walk stretched long enough for the tightness to unravel a bit. Dusk gave way to the creek bank. Trees began to thicken. Birdsong slowly replaced the whispers of town. And her breath, it finally began to ease. The cabin came into view like it had grown from the ground itself. Not built, just was. A porch of rough wood. A roof patched with care. A fence sagging at the joints. 2 horses grazed in the open, slow and unbothered. Inside, the place was simple but warm. A fireplace with fading embers. A cot folded neatly in the corner. And a small table with a single tin cup in the center. He set her trunk by the window and lit a lamp. "You take the bed. I'll use the floor. You don't have to, eh? I didn't bring you here for that." She flinched. Barely. But he noticed. He didn't push. "Dinner's beans and bread," he said. "I don't keep liquor in the house." That part came quieter. Like he knew it meant something. She nodded again. Slower this time. That night, she watched the stars through a cracked window. Cool air curling in. The sheets smelled like wood smoke and maybe a touch of sage. Sleep didn't come. Not yet. Outside, he sat on the porch, whittling something small. Maybe a horse. Maybe nothing. She watched shavings curl off the blade and thought of her mother. Of promises made in ink. And how fast men could break them with silence. She rose, stepped softly toward the door. The floor didn't creak. "You never asked my name," she said. He looked up. "You'll say it when you're ready." "I'm not her," she said. "I'm not what he was." He nodded. "Didn't think you were." The night still between them. Wind moved through the trees like someone politely clearing their throat. Then he said, "You stay if you want. You leave, I'll give you a horse and enough food to get somewhere else. I've got nowhere to go. Then you've got here." Her chest tightened. Not with fear. It was something weightier. Quieter. Like sorrow had finally found somewhere to sit down. She whispered, "Thank you." "No need," he replied, and went back to his carving. Morning arrived in soft shades of pink and gold. She hadn't slept. But when sunlight brushed her face, it didn't feel like blame. She got up, folded the blanket neatly, and stepped outside. The air had a coolness to it. He was already out there, splitting logs. Didn't glance her way. "I can cook," she said. "Then go on and cook," he replied. She smiled just a little. It caught her off guard. Inside, the cast iron pan was spotless. She cracked a few eggs, fried them up, and toasted some bread on the stove's edge. When he sat down, he looked at the plate like it meant more than breakfast. "Been a long time since someone made a meal for me." She stayed quiet. Just took her seat across from him and ate too. When they'd finished, he wiped his mouth on the back of his hand and stood. "Fencing's down by the west line. I'll need a hand. I don't shy away from work." "I know." They headed out together. And for the first time in a long while, her shadow didn't feel like it was walking alone. The days moved forward, not with noise, but with quiet, steady rhythm. Each dawn, she woke to the rhythmic thud of an axe. Not wild swings, purposeful ones. She learned his routine before she learned his name. 2 strikes. A pause. Then 1 clean, low chop like a period on a sentence. He wasn't a man who filled silence just to kill it. He worked like someone who'd grown up inside silence. And maybe been saved by it too. When she offered to help, he'd nod. Pass her tools without speaking. Split the chores with no question. By the fourth day, she'd figured out how he liked his coffee. Strong, black, untouched. By the sixth, she noticed he didn't pray out loud, but lingered a moment over his plate, like a man offering quiet thanks to something or someone. Still, he never asked about her past. Not even once. And that more than anything hurt, because she kept waiting for it. One morning, after tending the hens and sweeping the porch, she wandered near the barn and spotted a half-finished chicken coop. The nails were rusted, the wood bent from years of snow and sun. She stood there with her hands on her hips, staring at the slumped roof. Was this supposed to be something? She called out. He looked up from a fence post he was fixing, half hidden under his hat. Yeah, got started. Never finished, like plenty else. He raised a brow but didn't crack a smile. You mind if I take a stab at fixing it? She asked. I'll mind if you make a mess of it, he said, and tossed her a hammer. She caught it midair and got right to work. It had been ages since she used her hands for something that wasn't survival. With every board she nailed down, something inside her began to straighten out. She heard her mother's voice echo in her mind. Soft but sure. Measure twice. Cut once. She used to say it with a wink, like it meant more than just wood. The sun burned the back of her neck. Her fingers, toughened by time, blistered again. But it felt good. Honest work. Her own. By dusk, the frame stood straighter. Less crooked. More sure. She stepped back, quietly proud. He came walking from the barn, wiping his hands with a rag. You squared it up nice, he said. I'm not useless, she muttered. I never said you were. No, but most men don't need to. They just find softer ways to say it. He looked at her. Really looked this time. And for a moment, she thought he might say something gentle, something tender. But instead he said, Come wash up. Supper's ready. That evening, over hot stew and thick slices of bread, she asked quietly, Why don't you ever ask me about myself? He didn't flinch, didn't even lower his spoon. Figured if you wanted me to know, you'd tell me. And if I don't, then that's yours to keep. She leaned back, squinting slightly. What kind of man lets a stranger stay on his land and doesn't ask questions? He met her stare, steady as always. One who's been judged enough to know how useless it is. She studied him. He didn't waver. Hands rough. But his voice, always calm. There was something in how he answered. Something honest and unhurried. That rattled her more than any lie ever had. You're odd, she said. Stranger than a woman who shows up in a dusty town with no kin and a cursed name? She smirked in spite of herself. Touché. The next week brought heavy skies. Storms rolled in slow. Thunder moved through the valley like the heavens were dragging something weighty behind them. The wind howled, and rain beat hard on the windows like it wanted to come inside. She stood by the fire, arms folded tight as the roof groaned above. You think those shingles will hold? She asked. They've held so far. If not, I've got buckets. She turned toward him slowly. You're a strange kind of comfort, you know that? I've heard worse. The fire popped and cracked. He handed her a blanket, then settled back in his chair, picking up his carving again. What are you making? She asked. He paused. Not sure yet. Sometimes it tells you. Must be nice, she said. Having something speak to you if you're patient enough to hear it. He gave a slow nod but didn't say more. The quiet between them didn't feel heavy. It felt chosen. She watched the firelight dance. My mother used to sing when storms came through, she murmured. Said it kept the dark from creeping in. He stayed silent. I haven't heard her voice in 10 years. Still, he didn't speak, but he set his carving down now. And somehow that said more than anything. 2 days later, she noticed it on her windowsill. A bird, simple in shape, wings tucked in, smooth, unfinished. She ran her thumb along the carving's smooth edge. Didn't thank him, she knew he didn't need her to. That same afternoon, they hitched up the wagon and rode into town. He was after nails. She needed soap. But the town hadn't changed its tune. They still looked at her like her last name sat bitter on their tongues. They walked shoulder to shoulder, and though no one dared speak to her with him beside her, she felt every stare press against her skin. There was something about the way he walked, a kind of quiet that kept people from stepping too close. Not threatening, just certain. Still, in the general store, the murmurs started up again. "That's Ezekiel Braddock's girl," someone mumbled. "Drunk's blood don't run clean," said another. The storekeeper froze mid-ring on the nails. The rancher didn't shout, didn't glare. He simply said, "You done whispering? Or do you want to say it where she can hear it?" Silence dropped over the room like a curtain. She didn't turn, didn't need to. The quiet said plenty. They left with their supplies and headed back to the wagon. As they climbed in, she looked over at him. "Is silence your go-to when you're mad?" "I've seen what yelling brings," he said. "I aim for better." She gave a slow nod. A new kind of respect settled inside her, quiet but solid. "You didn't have to step in like that." "Nope. But you did once." "So I did." She didn't smile, but her eyes softened a shade. That night, he handed her a worn book. "Never been good with words," he said, "but this helped me back when I needed it." She took it gently. The cover was faded, corners softened by time. "Psalms and prayers." "You still religious?" she asked. "Used to be," he replied. "And now?" "Now I believe what I can see." She lifted her gaze. "And what do you see when you look at me?" He paused longer this time. "A woman who's been invisible for too damn long." She swallowed hard. The quiet returned, but it felt like something warm this time. Like being wrapped in a quilt you didn't ask for but needed all the same. Later, lying in bed, she opened the book. Inside the front cover, scribbled faintly in pencil, it read, "May the quiet ones find peace before the loud ones steal it." She traced the words over and over, until sleep finally took her. In the days that followed, things began to shift. Not dramatically, not loudly, but undeniably. She caught herself humming again while she worked. Stopped tying her braid up so tight. Let it fall down her back for once. One morning she asked, "You like pie?" "I do," he said, "but I like it best when it catches me off guard." So she made him apple, with far too much cinnamon. He didn't mind. Ate 2 slices. And when their hands touched while drying dishes, he didn't jerk away. The next test came out by the well. She was hauling up water when the rope slipped. The bucket slammed hard against the stone, drenching her dress and jolting her wrist. She let out a string of curses. Ones her father used to throw around like coins. He came running, took one look, and froze when he saw her holding her arm. "Ain't broken," she said quickly, brushing off the worry. He crouched beside her, took her hand in his, gently turned it over, checked the swelling, then wrapped it with a scrap of linen. "You've got a real bad habit of doing everything yourself," he murmured. "I didn't have a choice," she whispered. He met her eyes. "You do now." She stared at him, eyes burning. "I don't know what to do with that." "You'll figure it out," he said. "I'll be here while you do." That night, she stood by the fire, bird carving in hand. "I used to think I was broken," she said, voice low. "Like something was rotten in me just because I came from him." He didn't speak, but she felt it then. Maybe being hurt didn't make her wrong. Maybe it just meant she'd survived. He nodded slowly. Takes courage to say that. Takes even more to sit with it. Their eyes met across the fire. Neither moved. Then softly, she said, "I think I want to stay." His voice matched hers in tone. "I think I'd like that." The storm came without much warning. Skies cracking open just past noon. Dark clouds rolled in from the west like something long overdue. They stacked over the hills, heavy and threatening. The wind turned sharp like cold water poured down the back of a shirt. She was standing near the edge of the pasture, a coil of rope in one hand, an ache in her chest she couldn't explain. He'd gone off to mend the gate, quiet as ever, leaving her to tend to chickens and herbs strung up to dry. But even with the stillness around her, she could feel something coming, not just in the sky, but behind her ribs. The first crack of thunder rattled the porch rail. Then came the rain, fast and hard. It slammed the roof like it meant business, turning the dry earth to thick mud in no time. She ran out without a second thought, apron whipping in the wind, just in time to see him emerge from the trees, soaked through, hat low against the storm. His jaw was clenched tight. His eyes looked sharper than she'd ever seen them. His shirt clung to him, torn just below the collar. Not from where, but from something else. She called out. He didn't say a word, just dropped the tools on the porch and walked past her like a man with something chasing him from the inside. She followed. Inside, everything felt smaller somehow. Wet clothes piled by the door, firewood too damp to catch, and a heaviness in the air that hadn't been there before. "You okay?" she asked softly. No reply. He dropped into the wooden chair like his legs had quit on him, stared at the floor. His knuckles were scraped raw. "Did someone come out there?" she asked. He said nothing. "Rancher." This time he looked up slowly. Not angry, just heavy with something unsaid. When he finally spoke, his voice came low and flat. "Someone I used to know. From back when?" "Back when what?" "Back before I stopped letting anger drive me." She moved in a little closer, arms crossed to block the cold more than the conversation. "You hit him." "No." "A beat." "He hit you." He shook his head slightly. "Just words," he said. "Still stung though. But something about you changed." He stood and walked toward the window, watching the rain streak down the glass like faded regrets. She focused on his reflection instead of his face. "You don't talk much," she said, "but when you do, it lands. So say what's gnawing at you." He didn't answer right away. The pause stretched long. Then he said, you were your father's child. Said I was walking the same road my mama did it, trusting someone who'd wreck me in the end." Her breath caught hard in her chest. "And did you believe him?" she whispered. "No," he said, quicker this time. "But it stirred something ugly anyway." She gave a slow nod. The pain didn't jab, it rose slow, like floodwater seeping under a door. "Why didn't you shut him down right there?" "I did," he said. "But the fact I even had to, that's what gets me." She turned away, hands trembling at her sides. She didn't want to cry. Not again. Not for this. "You still think I'm her?" she asked, voice barely there. "I think you're yourself. But I've got his blood. His name. That doesn't wash off." "You believe names mean more than choices?" he asked. "Names hang around longer." He took a step toward her. "Then change it." She spun on him. "To what?" He hesitated, then spoke softly. "Whatever you want. Mine, if that's what you choose." She froze. Outside, the rain eased into a dull whisper, as if the sky leaned in to listen. Her eyes widened. Breath caught. "You're not proposing, are you?" she asked, trying to smile, but it didn't land. "No," he said gently, "not yet, but I'd stand beside you if you wanted to become someone else." She couldn't reply, couldn't find words. Instead, she lit the stove and set the kettle on. Let the motion give her back her breath. "I was 9, she said quietly. The first time he forgot my birthday. Came home reeking of another woman's perfume. And flipped a coin at me like it was a gift." He didn't interrupt. "He used to shut my mama in the root cellar when she cried too loud. Said grief was weakness. Said women were made to bend." She poured tea into a chipped cup. "I swore I'd never love a man who drank. And never one who stayed quiet while someone else hurt me." She turned to face him, holding the cup steady. "You don't drink, but you don't say much either. And sometimes I wonder what that silence is hiding." He stepped closer, slow and careful. His voice was soft now. "I don't stay quiet to hide. I stay quiet to hear better." "To hear what?" "What people actually need, more than what they say out loud." The air between them thickened. Not with tension, but with weight. She clutched the warm cup like it could anchor her. "I don't know how to believe in something that isn't trying to break me," she admitted. "Then let me show you," he said, but slow. Thunder rumbled again in the distance, softer now, like the worst had passed. He walked over to the shelf and picked up the bird carving. "This ain't perfect. I left it unfinished. Thought maybe you'd know how to complete it." She took it in her hands. One wing still rough, the other smooth with care. It rested in her palm like it had always belonged there. "I don't know how," she said softly. "Then we'll figure it out together." Later that week, after the storm dried and the warmth returned, she rode into town for Thread. He came along quiet as ever, but something had shifted. The way people looked at them, it wasn't kinder exactly, just more cautious, like maybe they saw something they didn't know how to name. At the mercantile, the clerk asked for her name to write in the ledger. She hesitated, then said, "Just put me down as the rancher's girl." He glanced at her from the side. She gave him a small, sure smile. Outside, as he helped her up onto the wagon seat, his hand lingered lightly at her elbow. "I don't mind if they think that," she said. "Think what?" "That I belong to you." He looked away, then back again. "Only if that's how you feel." "I don't. Not yet," she said. "But maybe someday." Back at the ranch, she hung laundry in the sun, bare feet pressed into soft grass. He repaired a door hinge, didn't say a word, but his eyes followed her. That night they sat by the fire, and she rested her head against the armrest beside him. Not touching, but close. "You ever get tired of being this careful?" she asked. "I wasn't always. Used to act on impulse. Got folks hurt." A pause. "I used to disappear," he said. "Hide out till the worst passed. But that never kept me safe." They both smiled then. Not big, but honest. The knock came just as dusk settled. She was folding a clean linen sheet when it hit the door. Once, then again, then a third time. Heavy, familiar, the kind of knock you feel in your spine. The rancher stood slowly, shotgun already in hand. He didn't raise it, didn't cock it, just held it. She moved beside him, clutching the sheet like armor pressed to her chest. "Stay behind me," he said, voice low. She didn't. He opened the door, and standing there was the shadow she'd tried to leave behind. Coat sagging off one shoulder, boots scuffed, bottle swinging lazy from thick fingers. Hair more gray now, gut heavier, but the eyes, still mean. Her father. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered, blinking hard. "There you are, girl. Heard you were out here playing house." She said nothing. He turned his eyes on the rancher. "Man like you should know better than to get tangled up with her kind." The rancher didn't move, didn't blink. "You here to drink or to start trouble?" he asked calmly. "I came to take what's mine." The air turned tight. "You're not mine," she said flatly. He laughed, bitter and thick. "I made you, fed you, named you. Blood don't get wiped clean, girl. You gave up your right the day you traded Ma's locket for whiskey," she shot back. He sneered, lips curling. "That all it takes? A dress and a bed to make you forget who you come from?" The rancher stepped forward, steady and deliberate. "You've said your piece," he said. "Now get off my land." Her father's hand twitched. "Careful, son. You don't know the truth about her." "I know more than you ever bothered to find out," the rancher said, voice like steel. The old man's jaw clenched. "I'll let the law decide where my rights stand. You'd need to stay sober long enough to find the courthouse," she snapped. His arm jerked. Fast this time. The bottle arced wide. "Aim not to kill, but to hurt." She flinched. The rancher didn't. He caught the wrist mid-swing, twisted it hard, and shoved the man backward. The bottle clanked off the porch rail and rolled into the mud. Her father staggered, wheezing, off balance. "Go," the rancher said. "Or what?" Her father spat. "You don't want to find out." For a breath, the night held its breath. Then her father snarled, turned on his heel, and stumbled into the dark, swallowed by the same shadows he always crawled back to. The door shut behind him. The rancher turned. "You all right?" She nodded barely, but the tears slipped down anyway. She let the sheet fall, let the shaking come. He reached out, pulled her in with slow, sure arms. She didn't pull away. "I should have hit him," she whispered. "You didn't need to, but I wanted to. That's not the same thing." She leaned her forehead against his chest. Voice barely there. "Why do they always come back? Because they think they still can." They sat in silence after that, the fire popping low in the hearth. The wood still smelled like pine, but beneath it was smoke. Old smoke, the kind that lingered. She stared into the flames and saw pieces of her past. The narrow hallway where glass littered the floor, corners she used to hide in. The kitchen table where her mother once wept into chipped ceramic. Then she looked up, saw his hands, her rancher's hands, calloused, steady, wrapped around a mug. No fury in them, just quiet warmth. "Do you ever get tired?" she asked. He blinked slowly. "Tired of what?" "Of being the one who holds the line." He let out a breath. "Sure, but I'd rather be tired than ashamed." She gave a faint nod. "I've been running from shame so long. I don't even know how to stand still anymore." "You don't have to keep running," he said gently. "And if I freeze, then I'll be right here waiting." The next morning, a rider came. Sheriff Amos. She figured the rancher had sent for him. He never said a word about it. Didn't need to. In small towns, things move quieter than law books, but faster than gossip. Amos was old, half-retired, with a jaw like old stone, and a scar that split through his chin like a story no one asked about. "You say it was Ezekiel Braddock?" he asked, one leg still over the saddle. The rancher nodded once. The sheriff spat into the dirt. "That man's been due a reckoning since before your girl here was born." "She's not my girl," the rancher said. The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "She's her own." The old sheriff offered a crooked, almost smile. "I'll make sure he doesn't bother you again," he said. "One way or another." She stood just behind the doorframe, watching as Sheriff Amos rode off down the dirt path. That rifle slung across his back like it belonged there, like it had always been part of him. By the time the sun dipped low, she was out by the chicken coop again. The storm had knocked it down last week, and life hadn't given her time to set it right until now. The hammer felt right in her grip, not like a chore, but like a decision she'd made herself. He sat on the porch, sipping coffee, his eyes on her. "You always stare like that," she called over. He shrugged casually. "Only when I give a damn." She drove in another nail. "Why didn't you swing last night?" she asked, glancing his way. He took another slow sip before replying. "I've raised my hand before. Didn't like the kind of man I turned into." "And what about now?" He looked at her, steady. "You made me want to be different from that." She turned her head, eyes stinging without warning. He stood and walked over to her, then held out his hand, not to claim, but to steady. "You've walked through fire," he said quietly. "You don't owe anyone your ashes." Later that night, she returned the bird carving to its place on the mantel. One wing now finished, the other still rough. "I think I like it this way," she murmured. He looked at her, eyes soft. "How come?" "Because it shows where it started." "You sure you don't want to finish it?" "Maybe not. Maybe never." "That's all right," he said. She nodded. "It's still a bird." "It is. And I'm still me." "You are." She smiled. Spring arrived quietly, like someone knocking on a door they weren't sure they were welcome to open. The prairie loosened its grip little by little, creek ice breaking like sorrow finally loosening its hold, frost giving way to warmth. One fence post at a time. Trees that once looked dead now reached with soft green fingers toward the sun. And without announcement, her heart began to thaw too. She started waking early. Not from fear, but from peace. She didn't lie there waiting for screaming. Didn't strain her ears for footsteps in the dark. Instead, she folded blankets, washed tin cups, studied her hands, rough, worn, but steady. They didn't shake anymore. Isaac still rose before the sun, but now he left the kettle warm on the stove for her. Little things, quiet gestures, like someone slowly editing the story of her life, one kind line at a time. He never asked her to stay again, never told her to go. He just kept showing up, with nails for the coop, old books with dried flowers tucked between pages, and silence that didn't ask anything from her. Until one evening, the silence shifted, and he asked a question. "Would you want a ring?" His voice was plain, low, like it had weight. She looked up from the shirt she was mending. "A ring. Nothing fancy. Just something to say it's yours if you want it." She blinked slowly. "I never pictured myself wearing one again." "You don't have to," he said gently. "We could just keep on the way we are." She set the shirt down. "I don't want to keep doing just this," she said. His jaw tightened. "I want more," she added quickly. "Not dresses or vows or church bells, but a name I chose. One that's mine because I want it." He exhaled long and quiet. Then take mine, he said, if that's what you want. She didn't cry. Not that night. Instead, she reached for him, rested her fingers on his jaw, and whispered, "Say it. Tell me your name. I want to hear it from you." He smiled, gentle, a little crooked. "Isaac." She whispered it back like she was learning a prayer. "Isaac." It fit in her mouth like it belonged there. He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. They never called it a wedding. The preacher read the words under a cottonwood tree, boots sinking into the fresh spring mud. No white chairs, no organ music, just her in the blue dress she stitched with her own hands, and Isaac in the coat he'd worn the day he buried his mother. A few folks from town showed up, some out of courtesy, a handful out of quiet hope. But she didn't look at them. She watched him, and when he spoke her name, not the one handed to her in shame, not the one branded by blood, but the name she had chosen, carried forward with both hands, she knew something had ended, and something entirely new had just begun. Weeks slipped by, and then the girl appeared, 15 years old, thin, dust-covered. She clutched a folded paper that snapped in the breeze, like it might slip free if she loosened her grip. She arrived by wagon, just like she once had, hair in knots, lips trembling. The townspeople kept their distance, whispers trailing behind them. "She's from the Vexley clan," someone murmured. "Nothing good in that bloodline." The girl sat alone on the platform, arms wrapped around her bag like it might vanish too. And that's when she saw herself. Not the face, not the clothes, but the silence. The way the girl's body folded inward, like she was bracing for the moment she'd be left behind. She didn't pause, didn't wait for the girl to speak. She walked up slow, eased down beside her. "You got a name?" she asked gently. The girl gave a small nod, but said nothing. "When I first got here," she said softly, "no one said my name like it mattered. Then, after a moment, someone finally did, and it changed everything." The girl turned toward her, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I came to marry someone," she whispered, "but he never came." "I know that road," she replied. "Walked it once myself." "What happened to you?" She smiled gently. "Someone looked past where I came from." The girl dropped her gaze. "They say I'm nothing but a drunk's daughter, a thief's blood." "Let them talk," she said. "You don't come from your escape. You come from what you become." The girl blinked, her eyes wide. "What do I do now?" She stood calm and sure. "You come with me." Back at the ranch, Isaac looked up from the barn. One look at her, Then the girl, told him everything he needed to know. He nodded once and disappeared inside to boil water. The girl washed in silence, slowly, and then cried. No one asked what had happened. No one needed to. At dinner, the girl looked up between bites. "You got a name?" she asked. Isaac smiled softly. "He does," she answered. "But mine's the one that matters." The girl looked puzzled. She leaned in, voice low and steady. "Say it with me. I ain't what they called me." The girl repeated, barely audible, "I ain't what they expect of me." She nodded. "And I'm not leaving myself behind. I'm becoming more than what they feared." The girl inhaled slowly, then smiled. That night, she sat outside on the porch beside Isaac. The moon hung low in the sky. The fire crackled softly behind them, and the girl slept soundly inside, wrapped in a quilt her mother once stitched by hand. She reached over, lacing her fingers with Isaac's. "I think I'm ready to finish the bird now," she said. He looked at her, quiet as ever. "You sure?" She nodded. "It's time." She carved the second wing, this one smoother than the first. She didn't cover the imperfections, didn't sand away the scars. She left them, let the bird carry them, so it could look like it had lived. When she placed it back on the shelf, it faced the front door, as if waiting to welcome whoever might walk in next. The following morning, the preacher rode by and gave a tip of his hat. "Morning, Mrs." he began. She cut in gently, voice calm and clear. "Just call me by the name I chose." He paused. "And what name's that?" She smiled, chin lifted with quiet pride. "The one that belongs here, with him, and with the woman I've become." The wind caught hold of the laundry on the line, making it snap and dance like it had something to say. And out in the field, the girl began to sing, not loud, just enough to stir something.